By dawn, every royal wolf in Veyrhold had refused to eat. That had never happened before. Not during war, not during famine. Not when the winter plague swept through the lower villages and half the kingdom's hounds died foaming at the mouth. The royal wolves were not common beasts. They were moonbred, iron-trained, and blood-sworn to the alpha crown. They ate when commanded, they hunted when ordered, they killed when released. But that morning, beneath the gray light of a storm-heavy sky, 73 royal wolves stood in a perfect circle around the smallest cage in the eastern kennels and would not touch their bowls. Inside that cage sat a kitchen servant girl accused of stealing meat. Lyra Ashwyn had not slept. She sat barefoot on the cold straw, knees drawn to her chest, wearing the same torn brown kitchen dress she had worn when the guards dragged her from the cookhouse the night before. Her wrists were raw where rope had bitten into them. A bruise darkened one cheek. Rainwater dripped through the cracked kennel roof and slid down her tangled black hair, but she barely noticed the cold anymore. Cold was easier than fear. Fear had teeth. And all around her, behind the bars and beyond the stone walkway, the royal wolves watched her with glowing silver eyes. They should have hated her. That was what the kennel master said when he threw her into the cage. Royal wolves despised thieves. They despised weakness. They despised servants who forgot their place. He had laughed as he locked the iron gate, telling her that if she survived the night without losing a hand, she might learn not to steal from the king's kitchens again. But the wolves had not attacked. The oldest one, a scarred white female with one torn ear, had padded to the bars and lain down against the cage door as if guarding it. Then another wolf came. Then another. By midnight, the kennel master stopped laughing. By dawn, the entire royal pack had formed a circle around Lyra's cage, and not one had eaten. The trouble had begun with a starving pup. Not a royal pup. Not an important one. Just a thin gray kennel-born runt with a bent front paw, too weak to fight its siblings for scraps. Lyra had found it shivering near the refuse barrel behind the kitchens, ribs showing beneath damp fur, eyes glazed from hunger. She had stolen one strip of roasted venison. One, from a silver platter meant for the High Council's midnight feast. She had crouched in the dark beside the ash barrels, hand trembling as the pup licked grease from her fingers. "Quickly," she whispered, glancing toward the kitchen door. "Before someone sees." Someone did. Lord Veyrhold stood beneath the archway in a dark council cloak trimmed with wolf fur, his long silver hair tied back at his neck, his face calm and thin as a blade. He was not the kind of man servants prayed to avoid because he shouted. He did not need to shout. His power moved quietly, through sealed orders, missing names, and doors that locked from the outside. "Well," he said, looking at the meat in her hand. "A kitchen rat feeding kennel blood. Lyra Ashwyn." The pup tucked itself behind her ankle. "I was going to pay it back," she lied. "With what?" Severn asked. "Ashes? Scrub water? Your charming lack of wages?" Her face burned. By the time the guards arrived, the pup had disappeared into the rain. Lyra did not betray it. She did not say she had stolen for a starving creature. She had learned young that kindness was never accepted as a reason from people who preferred punishment. So she stayed silent. That silence became guilt. Before the whole kitchen, Severn announced that theft from the king's table was theft from the crown. The cooks looked away. The scullery girls stared at the floor. Even old Mara, who sometimes slipped Lyra burnt bread when no one watched, said nothing. "Lock her in the eastern kennels," Severn ordered. "Let the royal wolves teach her reverence." Lyra had been dragged out through the storm with mud splashing her ankles and laughter following her from the lower servants' steps. Kitchen rat. Thief. Nameless girl. No one in Veyrhold knew where Lyra had come from. The old record said she had been found as a toddler near the river road with no crest, no family, and no wolf scent strong enough to claim. The palace took her in not as mercy, but as labor. She scrubbed pots before she knew letters, slept in storerooms, ate what others left, grew up beneath royal banners stitched with a silver wolf crown, and learned that some children were born under names while others spent their lives being called by tasks. Fetch, scrub, carry, go. Now, as dawn seeped into the kennels, she wondered whether her life had always been moving toward this cage. A horn sounded outside, The wolves did not move. The kennel master cursed under his breath from the far gate. "Feed," he commanded. No wolf touched its bowl. He raised a whip. The scarred white female lifted her head and growled. The kennel master lowered the whip. A few guards shifted uneasily. Then the outer doors opened. Alpha King Cassian Veyr entered the eastern kennels in black armor and a storm-dark cloak, and every man in the building dropped to one knee. Lyra had seen him only from far away before. On balcony steps, across feast halls, riding through the courtyard on a massive black warwolf with silver tack. He was younger than she expected up close, but no less terrifying for it. Tall, broad-shouldered, black-haired, with a sharp face carved by sleeplessness and pale blue eyes, so cold they seemed made from winter moonlight. A black crown rested against his brow, simple and brutal. His gaze swept the uneaten bowls, the circle of wolves, the cage, then hair. Lyra lowered her eyes by instinct. The scarred white wolf rose and stepped between him and the bars. The whole kennel went still. A royal wolf had blocked the Alpha King. Cassian's expression did not change, but the air did. Every wolf in the room felt the pressure of his command. Even Lyra felt it against her skin, heavy and dark, a storm trying to become law. "Move," he said. The white wolf did not. A murmur passed through the guards. Lord Severin entered behind the king, his face unreadable. "Your Majesty, forgive the disturbance." A servant girl stole from the council table. The beasts have become agitated by her scent. Lyra looked up to spite herself. Her scent? Cassian's eyes narrowed. "Open the cage." Severin went very still. "Your Majesty?" I said open it. The kennel master fumbled with the keys. The wolves watched him so intently his hands shook. When the lock turned, the cage door creaked open, but the white wolf still stood guard. Cassian stepped closer. Lyra pressed back against the bars. She hated herself for it. Hated that fear made her look guilty. Hated that the king's eyes noticed everything, the bruise, the raw wrists, the torn hem, the straw clinging to her wet hair. "What did you steal?" he asked. Her throat felt tight. "Meat, Your Majesty." "For yourself?" She hesitated. Severin answered for her. "Thieves often lie when pity is available." Cassian did not look at him. "I asked her." Lyra's fingers curled into the straw. If she told the truth, they might search for the pup. If she lied, she remained only a thief. Thief was safer than betrayer. "For myself," she whispered. The white wolf growled. "Not at the king?" "At her." Lyra flinched. Cassian noticed that too. "Even the wolf disagrees," he said quietly. Before Lyra could answer, a small whimper came from beneath the feeding trough near the back wall. Everyone turned. The gray pup limped into view, the strip of stolen venison bone still clutched between its teeth. Lyra's heart sank. Severin's mouth tightened. The pup looked at the guards, then at Cassian, then ran awkwardly through the circle of wolves and straight into Lyra's lap. The moment its small body touched her, silver light burst across the kennel floor. Every royal wolf lowered its head. Lyra gasped as something burned beneath the skin at her collarbone. Not pain, memory. A crescent mark appeared through the torn neckline of her dress. A silver wolf crown wrapped around a blooming moonflower. Cassian went pale. Severin whispered, "Impossible." The scarred white wolf stepped forward, pressed its forehead to the ground before Lyra's cage, and gave one deep, ancient howl. All 73 royal wolves answered. The kennel walls shook. Cassian stared at the mark on Lyra's chest as if the world had split open beneath his throne. Then the gray pup in her arms lifted its tiny head and spoke into the silence with a voice too old for its body. "Princess." Lyra stopped breathing, and somewhere beneath the palace, a sealed Moonfang tomb began to open. The word did not sound like a word at first. It sounded like a door opening under the earth. "Princess." The gray pup's tiny voice trembled through the eastern kennels, and every royal wolf kept its head lowered as if the title had weight enough to press even the strongest beasts to stone. Lyra sat frozen in the open cage with the runt curled in her lap, one hand tangled in its damp fur, the other pressed against the burning mark at her collarbone. A silver wolf crown, wrapped in a blooming moonflower, glowed beneath her torn dress, as though it had been waiting years for one starving pup to say what no court had dared remember. Alpha King Cassian Veyr stared at her, not as a king looked at a servant, not as a man looked at a thief, as if the lowest girl in his palace had suddenly become the answer to a wound he had spent his life pretending did not bleed. Lord Veyrhold recovered before anyone else. "Kill the pup." The command cracked through the kennel. A guard moved by instinct, drawing a short blade. The royal wolves rose as one. 73 growls filled the chamber. The guard stopped with the blade halfway from its sheath, face draining of color. Cassian turned slowly toward Severin. "What did you say?" Severin's expression remained calm, but Lyra saw the first fracture in him, a tightening at the mouth, a flash of fear in the eyes. He had not meant to speak so quickly. Power was safest when it did not look afraid. "The animal is afflicted," Severin said. It spoke through old kennel magic. Royal wolves are prone to ancestral echoes in places of strong blood memory. The scarred white wolf snarled. Cassian looked at it, then at Lyra's mark. "Blood memory," he repeated. Severin bowed his head. "Your Majesty, this servant has triggered instability in the royal pack. She must be removed before the wolves turn dangerous." Lyra's fingers closed around the pup. Removed. That word had many shapes. Sent away. Silenced. Buried. Fed to a law. Nobody questioned. Until too late. Cassian stepped into the cage. The white wolf allowed him to pass. That frightened Severin more than the growling had. Lyra pressed back against the iron bars, the pup tight against her chest. The king filled the small cage with cold rain, black armor, and the scent of storm pine. Up close, the sleeplessness around his eyes was worse. He looked carved from command and exhaustion, as if something inside him had been fighting the crown every night and losing by dawn. He lowered himself to one knee. The kennel master gasped softly. Lyra did not know where to look. No king had ever knelt close enough for her to see a thin scar cutting through his left eyebrow or the faint tremor in the hand he kept clenched at his side. "What is your name?" Cassian asked. She swallowed. "Lyra, full name. I have no house name." The mark at her collarbone flared. The wolves growled again, not in anger this time, but protest. Cassian's gaze dropped to the light under her torn neckline. "That mark says otherwise." "I scrub pots," Lyra whispered. "Marks do not change what people are allowed to do to you." Something dark crossed his face. "Sometimes they reveal why it was done." Severin stepped forward. "Your Majesty, she is manipulating the pack. You must not speak to her inside the cage." Cassian did not turn. "Why?" "Because royal wolves are bound to protect Moonfang blood." The words left him too cleanly, too prepared. Then he realized what he had admitted. The whole kennel seemed to stop breathing. Cassian arose. Very slowly. Lyra felt the air change again, but this time it was not command. It was danger being unchained one link at a time. "How does a servant girl manipulate wolves through blood you say no longer exists?" Cassian asked. Severin's eyes hardened. "I misspoke." "No," Cassian said. "You spoke too honestly." The white wolf padded to Lyra's cage and pressed its head against the bars. The silver mark on Lyra's chest burned brighter in answer. The gray pup lifted its head, staring at Cassian with eyes too ancient for such a small creature. Beneath the palace, something groaned. Stone shifting. Iron unlocking. A deep tremor passed through the floor. The kennel master dropped to his knees. "Moon preserve us." Cassian looked toward the far wall, where water ran down ancient black stones. "What is below the kennels?" Severin answered too quickly. "Drain tunnels." The white wolf barked once. A lie? Lyra knew it in her bones. Cassian turned toward the guards. "Break the wall." Severin's mask finally broke. "You cannot open old foundations because a stolen kitchen girl frightened the wolves." "Stolen." Lyra heard it. So did Cassian. The king's head turned back with lethal calm. "Stolen?" Severin went still. Lyra's heartbeat thundered in her ears. She had lived in Veyrhold since she was too young to remember anything before kitchen smoke and stone floors. The old record said foundling, nameless, river road. No crest, no family. But Severin had said stolen. Not found. Stolen. Cassian drew his sword. "Break the wall." No one waited for Severin's permission. Royal guards seized iron hammers from the kennel stores and struck the damp stone at the back of the chamber. The first blow echoed through the kennels. The wolves did not move from their circle. The second blow sent dust raining from the ceiling. The third opened a crack filled with silver light. Lyra stood without meaning to. The pup in her arms whined. The mark at her collarbone pulsed painfully. Cassian looked back at her. "Stay behind me." Lyra almost obeyed. Almost. Then she remembered Severin ordering the pup killed, remembered the cage, the stolen meat. The years of being told that survival meant staying low enough not to be noticed. No. Cassian's eyes sharpened. She stepped out of the cage, barefoot onto cold stone. The royal wolves parted for her. Every guard watched in disbelief. "I have spent my life behind people who decided where I was allowed to stand," Lyra said, voice shaking but clear. "Not again." For one heartbeat, Cassian looked like he might argue. Then he stepped aside. Not back. Aside. Beside her, the cracked wall gave way. Behind it lay a sealed passage descending into darkness, lined with moonstone and old roots. Silver fire burned in shallow bowls that had not been lit by human hands in years. At the entrance, carved into black stone, was the same mark glowing on Lyra's chest, a wolf crown wrapped in a moonflower. The scarred white wolf walked first. Then the gray pup wriggled from Lyra's arms and limped after it. "Wait," Lyra whispered. The pup looked back, not afraid, calling, "Princess." It whispered again. Cassian's face had gone pale beneath the cold mask. "That passage leads under the royal tombs." Severin's voice came from behind them, low and sharp. "Seal it." The guards turned. Severin had taken a crescent blade from his sleeve and held it against the kennel master's throat. His calm was gone now, burned away by the light beneath the wall. In its place was something older and uglier. Fear. "You do not know what opens beneath this palace," Severin said. "You do not know what the Moonfang line did. You do not know why they had to end." Cassian's sword lifted. "Then tell me." Severin smiled without warmth. "They could command wolves without domination. Do you understand what that means for a throne built on alpha law?" Lyra felt the words enter her like cold water. Command without domination. The royal wolves around her lowered their heads again. Not forced. Choosing. Severin dragged the kennel master backward. "That girl is not a servant. She is a civil war wearing kitchen rags." Cassian's voice cut through the kennel. "And you hid her?" "I saved the kingdom from her." The pup growled. The passage behind the wall flared brighter. From deep below, a woman's voice rose through the stone, faint as a lullaby remembered by the dead. "My daughter." Lyra stopped breathing. The voice came again, softer and closer. "Come home." Severin's blade trembled. Cassian looked at Lyra, and for the first time the dangerous Alpha King seemed truly afraid, not of her, but of what had been done to her. Then the moonstone passage shook. A sealed tomb door opened somewhere below, and every royal wolf turned toward the dark, waiting for Lyra to lead. The royal wolves waited for Lyra to lead. That was the first thing that made the kennel guards truly afraid. Not the hidden passage, not the dead woman's voice rising through the stone, not even Lord Severin Holt standing with a blade at the kennel master's throat, his carefully polished mask cracked open by panic. It was the wolves. 73 moonbred royal wolves, trained to obey Alpha command, all standing with their heads turned toward the dark passage beneath the eastern kennels, waiting not for King Cassian Veyr, but for a barefoot kitchen servant in a torn dress. Lyra could feel their attention like moonlight on bare skin. Notunga, not command. Recognition. The gray pup stood at the mouth of the passage, one bent paw lifted, staring back at her with eyes far too old for its small, trembling body. Behind it, the scarred white wolf had already stepped onto the first stair, silver fur glowing faintly in the moonstone light. The mark at Lyra's collarbone burned beneath her torn neckline, the wolf crown wrapped in a blooming moonflower. "My daughter." The voice from below whispered again, threading through the kennel stones like a lullaby sung through water. Lyra's knees weakened. She had spent her whole life believing she had no mother, no father, no bloodline worth recording. The palace ledgers called her foundling, the cooks called her useful. Severin had called her kitchen rat. No one had ever said daughter with such grief that the word felt like hands reaching from a grave. Cassian stepped close, not in front of her, but near enough that she felt the cold strength of him beside her. "You do not have to go down there." Lyra almost laughed. It came out as a broken breath. Do kings often open tombs under kennels and then tell servants they may refuse? His jaw tightened, not with anger, but with the sting of truth. No. Then why say it? His eyes shifted to the glowing mark on her chest. Because too many people already chose for you. The words struck deeper than she wanted them to. Severin heard them too. His blade pressed harder beneath the kennel master's throat. A thin line of blood appeared. Touch that passage, and you wake a war buried for 16 years. Cassian turned his head slowly. You keep saying that as if it defends you. It explains me, Severin snapped. You were a child when the Moonfang rebellion burned through this palace. You remember songs, not bodies. You remember banners, not the wolves tearing throats in the courtyard. The royal wolves growled, not at the passage. At Severin, Lyra stared at him. Moonfang rebellion? Severin's gaze cut to her, and for a heartbeat she saw hatred without disguise. Your mother's vanity dressed as mercy. She believed wolves should choose loyalty instead of submit to alpha command. She taught royal beasts to kneel from love, not hierarchy. Do you know what happens to kingdoms when every beast can choose? Lyra's voice shook. They stop obeying cruel men. The kennel went silent. Cassian looked at her then, truly looked, as if the servant girl in rags had just named the wound under his crown better than any counselor ever had. Severin laughed softly. There it is. Blood speaks before memory. She has been awake one moment, and already threatens the throne. Cassian's sword rose. You threaten a hostage, while calling her dangerous. Severin's face hardened. The gray pup whimpered. The moonstone passage pulsed. From below came another sound, stones scraping open, deeper now, not one door, several. The kennel master, still shaking under Severin's blade, whispered, Mercy. Severin's mouth curled. Mercy is what buried the Moonfangs, instead of burning them all. Lyra took one step forward. The wolves parted wider. Cassian's hand shifted as if to stop her, then stilled. He was learning, or trying to. Let him go, Lyra said. Severin smiled. You command now? No, she said. I ask once. The scarred white wolf turned from the stairway and bared its teeth. Severin looked from wolf to wolf, then to Cassian's drawn sword, then to Lyra's glowing mark. He shoved the kennel master forward and back toward the side gate. Cassian moved. Severin lifted a small black vial from his sleeve and smashed it against the floor. Smoke erupted. The wolves lunged, but the smoke turned silver in their faces, sharp with old temple ash. They recoiled, snarling. Guards coughed. Lyra's eyes burned. Through the blur, Severin vanished into the side corridor, his voice echoing once behind him. If she reaches the tomb, let the dead answer what the living were too weak to finish. The side door slammed. Cassian cursed and turned to his guards. Seal the outer yard. No one leaves the palace grounds. Find him alive. The guards ran. Lyra should have been relieved that Severin was gone. She was not. His fear had not left with him. It remained in the kennel, clinging to the stones, to the passage, to the word rebellion. The gray pup nudged her ankle. Princess. Lyra looked down. I am not that. The pup tilted its head. The scarred white wolf descended one more step, then waited. Cassian looked toward the moonstone stairs. If Severin reaches the council first, he will turn this into treason before truth reaches the throne hall. Then we should go down before he teaches everyone what to fear. Cassian's eyes met hers. This time he did not warn her. He only nodded. Lyra stepped into the passage. The air changed at once. The kennels above smelled of wet fur, iron, blood, and straw. The stairway beneath smelled of moonflowers, old dust, and something heartbreakingly familiar, warm milk, crushed herbs, a woman's skin after rain. Lyra had no memory of that scent, yet her body did. Her throat tightened so hard she had to grip the wall. Moonstone lit beneath her fingers. Images flickered through the stairwell. A woman running with a child in her arms, black hair unbound. A silver crown slipping from her head. Wolves around her, not attacking, shielding. A baby crying against her chest. Fire behind them. A counselor's voice shouting, "Take the child before the wolves name her." Lyra stumbled. Cassian caught her elbow. She pulled away by instinct. He released her instantly. That mattered. I saw her, Lyra whispered. Your mother? She nodded, though the word felt too large to hold. The gray pup brushed against her foot and continued downward. The scarred white wolf led them through a narrow corridor lined with carvings of wolves and moonflowers. Every carving turned faintly toward Lyra as she passed, Cassian noticed. The palace itself remembers you. Lyra looked at him. Does that frighten you? Yes. The honesty startled her. He did not soften it. But not as much as the fact that it forgot you because men under my crown ordered it to. They reached the bottom. A great circular chamber opened beneath the kennels, buried directly under the eastern foundation. It was not a tomb in the way Lyra had imagined one. No coffin, no dusty royal bed, no neat death arranged for history. It was a sealed sanctuary torn apart by violence. Moonflower vines, pale and dry after years without light, climbed the walls. Broken wolf statues lay shattered across the floor. Silver chains hung from pillars. At the center stood a stone cradle cracked in half. Behind it was a mural. A queen with black hair and a moonflower crown, one hand resting on the head of a white wolf. Beside her, a little girl painted with the same silver mark at her collarbone. Lyra stopped. Cassian came beside her, silent. On the wall beneath the mural, words were carved into the stone. Not rebellion, return. The scarred white wolf walked to the center of the chamber and lowered itself before the broken cradle. The gray pup climbed into it, curled up inside the crack, and began to glow. Lyra's mark answered in silver fire. The chamber shook. A woman's voice filled the air, no longer distant. My daughter was not hidden to steal a throne. She was hidden because the throne had already been stolen from choice. Moonlight poured through stone that had no windows. A figure formed before the cradle, a woman in torn silver robes, translucent and crowned with dead moonflowers. Her face was Lyra's face, made older, sadder, and sharper with grief. Lyra could not breathe. Cassian bowed his head. Not to a ghost, to a queen. The woman's eyes moved to him. Son of Veyr. Cassian's body went rigid. I was told your house betrayed mine, he said. You were told what made your crown lighter to wear. The word struck him visibly. Then the ghost turned to Lyra. My little moonflower. Lyra shook her head, tears burning hot. No. I scrubbed floors. I slept in pantries. I was locked in kennels for feeding a starving pup. Her mother's face twisted with pain. I know. That broke her. Lyra did not sob. She did not fall. She simply stood there while 16 years of loneliness rearranged themselves into one unbearable truth. Someone had loved her before the world used her. Cassian looked away, giving her that small privacy. The queen lifted a hand toward the broken cradle. Your blood is Moonfang. Not because you command wolves, but because wolves may choose you without fear. That is why they hid you, where royal wolves would be forbidden to reach. That is why Severin kept you beneath the kitchens, near enough to watch, low enough to erase. The chamber trembled again. Above them, faintly, bells began ringing. Not kennel bells, court bells. Cassian's face darkened. Severin reached the council. The queen's ghost looked toward the ceiling. Then he will force the reveal before she understands her own blood. Lyra wiped her face with the back of her hand. What reveal? Her mother's eyes filled with sorrow. Before she could answer, the chamber ceiling cracked with a thunderous sound. A voice rang down from above, Severin's voice, magnified by court magic. Bring the kitchen thief to the throne hall. Let the wolves prove whether she is princess or plague. The moonstone floor split beneath Lyra's feet. Silver light surged upward, wrapping her mark, the gray pup, the scarred white wolf, and every royal wolf waiting above. Cassian reached for her. This time, Lyra let him steady her. The queen's ghost whispered one final warning as the hidden chamber began to rise toward the court. If they force the wolves to choose in public, do not command them, Lyra. Let them come. The sanctuary shattered open, and the forgotten princess was lifted beneath the throne hall in a storm of silver wolves. The throne hall of Veyrhold was full when the floor split open. That was Severin's doing. He had not run to hide. He had run to prepare an audience. Every noble house had been summoned from its chambers under emergency bell. Every counselor stood beneath the iron banners. Every temple witness, royal guard, wolf handler, and high-born bloodline that mattered, had gathered around the black marble floor before the throne. They expected a trial. They expected a thief dragged from the kennels, shamed before the court, and condemned before the morning meal. Instead, the hidden Moonfang sanctuary rose beneath them in a storm of silver light. Stone cracked. Marble lifted. Moonflower vines burst through the floor like pale veins returning blood to a dead heart. The broken cradle appeared first, glowing from within. Then the scarred white wolf rose beside it, head lowered and silver fur shining like winter moonlight. Then the gray pup, tiny and bent-pawed, stood in the cracked cradle with its eyes blazing. Then Lyra appeared, barefoot, mud-stained, still wearing her torn kitchen dress, still bruised, still shaking, but the silver wolf crown and moonflower mark at her collarbone burned through the ruined cloth, bright enough for every noble in the hall to see. 100 voices gasped at once. Cassian rose beside her with one hand, still lightly braced near her arm, not holding her, not claiming her, only steadying until she found her feet. The moment she stood alone, he let go. The court saw that too. Severin stood at the base of the throne, one hand lifted in false alarm, his dark council cloak immaculate despite the chaos below. "There," he said, voice carrying through the hall. "You see what I warned you of. Old Moonfang magic beneath the palace. Wolves answering a kitchen thief. A dead rebellion waking under our king's feet." The nobles shifted back in fear. Lyra felt it move toward her like cold smoke. Thief, rebellion, plague. He was shaping the words before anyone could understand the truth. That was how men like Severin ruled. They reached the story before the wounded reached breath. The gray pup growled from the broken cradle. Severin looked at it with disgust. A kennel runt speaks one forbidden title, and suddenly we are expected to bow to a foundling with stolen magic? Lyra's hands curled at her sides. Cassian's voice came low beside her. "Careful, Severin." The counselor turned to him. "No, Your Majesty. You must be careful. Your throne is bound to Alpha law. If she is Moonfang, then every wolf in this hall becomes suspect. Every royal beast may choose feeling over command. Every noble oath may weaken. That is not mercy. That is collapse." Fear sharpened around the court. Lyra looked at the wolves. 73 royal wolves had followed the sanctuary's rise. They now entered the throne hall from the eastern doors, one by one, silent and solemn, their bowls of untouched food abandoned behind them. They did not snarl at the court. They did not rush to attack. They formed a wide circle around the broken cradle and Lyra, exactly as they had formed around her cage. A living wall. Not forced. Choosing. Severin pointed at them. "There is your proof." Cassian stepped forward. "Proof of what? That wolves can refuse to eat when injustice sits in their kennel?" A murmur moved through the lower court. Severin's eyes flashed. "You are bewitched by blood memory." Cassian's jaw tightened. "I am listening to what my palace buried." The words struck harder than a command. Lyra looked at him then. The Alpha King, who had terrified her an hour ago now, stood before his own court and admitted the palace had hidden something from him. It did not make him innocent. It did not erase the years she scrubbed his floors while his wolves slept closer to her truth than he ever had. But it mattered that he said it where everyone could hear. The court did not know what to do with a king who refused the easier lie. Severin did. He lifted a hand, and 2 guards dragged an old woman forward from the side doors. Mara, the kitchen cook. Lyra's breath caught. Mara's gray hair had come loose from its braid. Her face was pale with terror. One guard held her by the arm, while another pressed a blade near her ribs. She looked at Lyra once, and shame flooded her expression. Severin's voice softened, almost kindly. "Mara of the lower kitchens, tell the court what the girl is." Lyra went cold. Cassian's sword shifted slightly. Severin smiled. "No threat is needed, Your Majesty. Truth should speak freely." 11, end of 7. The blade near Mara's ribs pressed closer. Mara swallowed. "She is Lyra." Severin's smile thinned. "What is she?" Mara's eyes filled. "A kitchen servant. A thief?" Mara closed her eyes. Lyra already knew what answer Fear would choose. Fear had chosen silence the night before. Fear had watched her dragged to the kennels. Fear had raised her, fed her scraps, and called itself helpless. Yes, Mara whispered. She stole meat. The word hit the hall. Severin turned triumphantly. A thief. The gray pup barked once. Lyra stepped forward before Cassian could speak. Yes. The court went quiet. Severin paused. Lyra lifted her chin. I stole meat. Mara's eyes snapped open. Severin frowned, as if she had stepped out of the pattern he prepared. Lyra continued, voice shaking but clear. A starving pup with a bent paw was dying behind the kitchens. I stole one strip of venison from a feast table to feed him. She looked at the gray pup in the cracked cradle. The pup lifted its head proudly, though its bent paw trembled. Lyra looked back at the court. If that makes me a thief, then write it clearly. I stole food from people who had too much to feed, a creature they had taught everyone else not to see. No one spoke. Cassian's eyes were fixed on her. Unreadable but intense. Severin recovered. How noble. A servant girl confesses theft and expects the court to name it virtue. No, Lyra said. I expect the court to ask why one starving pup knew my name before any of you did. The mark at her collarbone flared. The royal wolves lowered their heads. Mara began to cry. Severin's nostrils flared. Enough. He raised his other hand, and temple guards appeared along the balcony with silver collars hanging from chains. The wolves snarled. Cassian's face darkened. You brought binding collars into my throne hall? Severin's voice turned cold. For the safety of the crown. No. Lyra whispered. She knew the collars without remembering them. The sight made her throat close. Silver rings, moonflower thorns carved backward, made not to hold beasts, but to punish choice. The ghost of her mother flickered behind the broken cradle, visible only in silver outline. Do not command them, Lyra. Let them come. Severin snapped his fingers. The collars dropped from the balcony. They did not fall to the floor. They flew toward the royal wolves. Lyra screamed. Cassian moved, sword flashing, cutting through the first chain. Guards lunged. Wolves scattered. The throne hall exploded into panic as silver collars whipped through the air like serpents seeking throats. One snapped around a young black wolf's neck. The animal collapsed instantly, choking on moonlight. Lyra ran to it. Do not touch that, Cassian shouted. She did anyway. Her fingers closed around the collar. Pain blasted through her body. She saw a flash of herself as a child, held down by hands she did not know, a cold ring pressed near her throat, someone saying, If the mark wakes, bury her lower. She saw royal wolves dragged away from a burning Moonfang nursery. She saw Severin younger, blood on his sleeve, carrying a bundle wrapped in kitchen cloth down the servants' stairs. Here, he had not merely hidden her, he had placed her where hunger, labor, and silence would grind her into nothing. The collar cracked under her hand. The black wolf gasped. Lyra staggered but did not fall. Every wolf in the hall turned toward her. Severin went pale. Cassian saw his face and understood. You used those collars on her. Severin stepped back. I saved your reign. You buried a child under my kitchens. I buried a war. Lyra rose slowly. The collar fell in two pieces at her feet. The mark on her chest was no longer only glowing. It was opening. Moonflower light spread across her collarbone and down her arms like silver roots. The broken cradle behind her began to sing, not with music, with names. Moonfang names. Her mother's voice rose through the hall. Let the wolves remember. The scarred white wolf howled. The gray pup answered. Then all 73 royal wolves turned away from the throne. They walked to Lyra. One be one. Past Cassian. Past the council. Past Severin's guards. They entered the circle around her and lay down with their heads to the floor. The court stared in horror. Severin's voice shook. Stop them. Cassian looked at the wolves kneeling before the girl in rags. Then he looked at Lyra. For the first time, the Alpha King lowered his sword. No, he said. The word moved through the hall like thunder. I will not stop what my throne was built to silence. Lyra's eyes filled, but she did not look away from Severin. The counselor's face twisted with fear. Above them, The palace bells began to ring on their own. Not court bells, not kennel bells, coronation bells. The black crown on Cassian's head cracked once down the center, and beneath the throne, the stolen Moonfang crown woke. The coronation bells rang without human hands. Their sound rolled through Veyrhold like a judgment too old for any council to silence. High above the throne hall, bronze bells hidden in the moon towers swung violently in the storm wind, though no servant had climbed the ropes and no priest had given the order. Each note struck the black marble floor, the iron banners, the kneeling wolves, and the cracked crown on Cassian Veyr's head. One crack, then another. The alpha crown did not shatter. It bled silver light. The court recoiled as a thin line of moonfire ran down the center of the black crown over Cassian's brow, across his temple, and vanished into the air like a memory trying to escape. Cassian did not move. He stood with his sword lowered, watching 73 royal wolves bow before Lyra Ashwyn instead of the throne he had been raised to believe they existed to serve. Lyra stood barefoot in the center of the hall, torn kitchen dress clinging to her rain-soaked body, the Moonfang mark burning open across her collarbone and down her arms. The gray pup pressed against her ankle. The scarred white wolf lay before her with its head lowered, old eyes bright with recognition. Around her, royal wolves formed a living circle no guard dared break. Lord Veyrhold stumbled back one step. That single step betrayed him more than any confession could have. "The crown is corrupted," he said, voice sharp. "The wolves are under old blood influence. Remove her from the hall." No one moved. Not the guards, not the wolf handlers, not even the counselors who had spent their lives obeying Severin before they obeyed conscience. Cassian turned his head slowly. "You will give no more orders in my hall." Severin's eyes flashed. "Your hall? Look at your crown. Look at your wolves. You are losing the very signs that make you king." Cassian's face hardened, but Lyra saw the blow land. Because Severin was not entirely wrong. The wolves had left him. The crown had cracked. The palace had opened a hidden tomb beneath his own kennels and revealed that the girl he had unknowingly kept as a servant was blood of the line his throne had erased. A weaker king would have struck first and asked questions over the bodies. Cassian did not. He looked at Lyra, not at the mark, not at the wolves. At her. "What do you hear?" he asked. The question was so unexpected the entire court seemed to hold its breath. Lyra blinked. "What?" "The bells are not ringing for me," Cassian said. "The wolves are not waiting for me." "What do you hear?" Severin's face twisted. "Do not ask her." Cassian's voice cut like steel. Silence. The command struck the hall. This time, it did not force the wolves down. It stopped only the man it was aimed at. Lyra closed her eyes. At first she heard too much. Bells. Rain. Wolves breathing. Nobles whispering prayers. Severin's panic. Cassian's controlled anger. Her own heart, running fast enough to break. Then underneath it all, she heard something else. A sound below the throne. Not a voice. A scrape, like metal being dragged across stone. Lyra opened her eyes. Something is moving under the throne. The gray pup whined. The scarred white wolf rose. Cassian turned toward the iron throne, black and brutal beneath the royal banners. The marble at its base pulsed faintly with the same silver light bleeding from his crown. The counselors backed away. Severin went still. Lyra saw it. So did Cassian. "What is beneath my throne?" the king asked. Severin's mouth tightened. "History." Cassian stepped toward him. "Try again." The scarred white wolf growled, low and ancient. Severin's gaze darted to the wolves, then to the broken floor where the Moonfang sanctuary had risen. He understood the night was slipping beyond his control. So he did what frightened men with power always did. He reached for another hostage. His hand shot out and grabbed Mara by the throat. The old cook gasped as Severin dragged her against him, a crescent blade flashing from his sleeve to her skin. One more step toward the throne, and the servant woman dies. Lyra froze. Mara's eyes filled with terror and apology. The court stopped breathing again. Severin pressed the blade close enough to draw blood. "You see, Lyra, this is what choice creates. Everyone thinks they may move where they please. Everyone forgets order. Wolves choose girls. Kings question crowns. Cooks imagine they may cry after years of silence. Lyra's hands shook. Mara had not saved her. Not when guards dragged her away. Not when Severin called her thief. Not for all the years Lyra slept hungry beneath the kitchen stairs. But Mara had also slipped her burnt bread, covered her during fever, taught her how to clean blood from stone with cold water so the stain would not spread. Small mercies did not erase cowardice. They did make her human. Lyra stepped forward. Cassian's sword lifted beside her. She raised one hand slightly. He stopped. Severin smiled. "Careful, princess. If that is what you are." Lyra looked at Mara. "Did you know?" Mara sobbed once. "Not at first." The answer hurt, but Lyra did not look away. "When?" Lyra asked. Mara's lips trembled against the blade. "When the wolves stopped snapping at you near the slaughter yard. When the moonflowers grew through the kitchen cracks every spring. When Severin ordered us never to let you near the kennels." Lyra felt the truth settle. Cold and heavy. "You kept me hungry." Mara closed her eyes. "Yes, you let them lock me in the cage." "Yes." "Why?" Mara broke then. "Because he said if I helped you remember, he would send you to the lower tombs, and no one would ever hear you cry." The hall went still. Severin's blade pressed harder. Enough. Lyra looked at the wolves around her. Every one of them watched her, waiting. The power in her blood rose like a tide, eager and terrifying. She could feel how easily the wolves would move if she asked. One breath, one gesture. Severin would be torn apart before his knife could finish its cut. Do not command them. Let them come. Her mother's warning echoed through her. Lyra looked at Mara again. "Do you want to live?" Mara stared at her, shocked. "Yes," she whispered. "Then move when you can." Severin laughed. "There will be no when." The gray pup limped forward. Severin glanced down. It was tiny, bent-pawed, half-starved, ridiculous against the politics of a kingdom. Then it bit his ankle. Severin cursed and jerked back. Mara dropped. Cassian moved. So did the scarred white wolf. Cassian struck the blade from Severin's hand while the white wolf drove him to the floor, one massive paw pinning his chest. The counselor gasped, staring up into old silver eyes. The wolves did not kill him. That frightened him more. Lyra walked to Mara and helped her sit up. Mara reached for her, then stopped herself. "Good." Lyra was not ready for apology shaped like touch. Cassian stood over Severin, sword at his throat. "Open the throne." Severin breathed hard beneath the wolf's paw. "You do not know what you are asking." Cassian's voice was cold. "I am learning, that is the point." Lyra turned toward the throne. The bells stopped. The silence afterward felt enormous. She walked past the kneeling wolves, past the broken moonflower vines, past nobles who stared at her as if she had become a myth, while still wearing kitchen mud on her feet. Cassian came beside her. The scarred white wolf dragged Severin forward, pinning him at the base of the throne. At the foot of the iron seat, Lyra saw a small indentation in the marble, a flower-shaped hollow. Her mark burned. She knelt and pressed her glowing hand to it. The throne groaned. Iron roots twisted upward from beneath the floor. Black marble split open in long silver cracks. The throne lifted, not as a seat, but as a lid. Beneath it lay a sealed chamber lined with moonstone, and inside the chamber rested a crown made of silver branches and white wolf bone. The Moonfang crown. But it was not alone. Around it lay tiny bones, wolf bones, pup bones, royal wolf bones. Lyra covered her mouth. Cassian went deathly pale. Severin closed his eyes. The scarred white wolf released a sound so full of grief that every living wolf in the hall answered. Lyra understood before anyone explained. When the Moonfang bloodline was erased, the wolves who refused to accept the stolen crown had been buried beneath the throne, not killed in battle, not honored as loyal beasts, buried as warning. Cassian's crown cracked again. This time, he took it off. The court gasped. He held the black alpha crown in both hands and looked down at the chamber beneath his throne. Then he looked at Lyra. "No throne is worth this," he said. Severin screamed, "If you renounce the crown, the packs will tear each other apart." Cassian did not look away from Lyra. "Then let them learn what held them together." Lyra stared at the Moonfang crown. It called to her not as command, but as ache. It wanted to be lifted, named, witnessed. But if she wore it now, Severin would win another way. The court would turn her from servant to symbol before she had taken one free breath. She stood slowly. I will not wear a crown over bones. The Moonfang crown flared, not offended. Awake! The silver branches unfolded, releasing a wave of moonlight across the throne hall. The buried wolf bones began to glow, each one forming a ghostly shape. Royal wolves of the old Moonfang line, scarred, proud, and silent. They rose around Lyra, then around Cassian, then turned toward the court. The gray pup stood before them and spoke again. Older now, clearer. Witness. The ghost wolves moved as one. They walked through the nobles, through the counselors, through the royal guards, leaving silver paw prints on the marble wherever old lies had been spoken. Each print opened a memory. Severin carrying a child through servant passages. Counselors signing orders to erase Moonfang names. Temple scribes rewriting rebellion into treason. Cooks threatened. Guards paid. Wolves buried. The court saw everything. Cassian looked at Severin. The counselor had gone silent at last. Lyra stood in the center of the exposed throne chamber, surrounded by living wolves and dead ones, kitchen mud on her feet and royal moonlight burning under her skin. By dawn, they had locked her in the kennels for feeding a starving pup. By morning, the throne had opened for the girl they tried to starve into silence. The throne had opened for the girl they tried to starve into silence, and the court of Veyrhold finally understood why Severin Holt had feared a kitchen servant. Lyra stood barefoot in the split marble, torn kitchen dress damp against her skin, the Moonfang mark glowing across her collarbone. Around her, living royal wolves and silver ghost wolves guarded the open chamber beneath the throne. Inside it, the Moonfang crown glowed among buried wolf bones, waiting. Lyra did not touch it. That frightened the court more than if she had seized it. Cassian stood beside the chamber with his cracked alpha crown in his hands. He looked at the bones beneath the throne he had worn all his life, and the truth hollowed his face. He had not buried them himself, but he had ruled above them. He had mistaken silence for loyalty. Severin remained pinned beneath the scarred white wolf's paw, but even exposed, he tried to twist the room. "Do you see?" he spat. "She opens graves and summons ghosts. This is how Moonfang rule begins again." Lyra looked down at him. "No. This is how buried truth begins breathing." The ghost wolves lifted their heads. Lyra stepped to the edge of the open chamber. "You buried them. You know their names." Severin's face tightened. Cassian's voice turned cold. "Name them." For the first time, Severin looked afraid. Not of death, of witness. The scarred white wolf pressed its paw harder against his chest. Severin choked, but Lyra raised one hand. "No," she said. "He will speak because the dead deserve names, not because pain forces him." The wolf stopped. The court watched. Severin breathed hard. Then finally he spoke. "Arven Moonfang." A silver wolf stepped from the light. "Zelka Moonfang." Another ghost appeared. "Thorn of the Eastern Run." "Nameless Whitepaw." "Aura." "Crown Sentinel." Each name became a wolf. Each wolf left a glowing paw print on the marble. Each print opened a memory. Moonfang wolves protecting a nursery, guards lowering weapons before children, Severin ordering loyal beasts buried beneath the throne so future kings would feel obedience under their feet and mistake it for loyalty. Then Severin spoke one name that broke Cassian's stillness. Veyra. A small silver wolf appeared near the chamber, marked with a dark crescent over one eye. Cassian's breath stopped. That was my mother's wolf. The memory opened. Queen Lyra Veyr knelt beside a Moonfang cradle, hiding a baby wrapped in kitchen cloth. Severin stood behind her. The queen whispered, "If the child lives, the throne may yet be forgiven." Then Severin's blade flashed. Blood spilled. Veyra leapt to protect her queen, but silver chains dragged the wolf down. The infant was carried through servant stairs and hidden beneath the kitchens. Lyra could not move. The infant was her. Cassian stared at Severin, as if the world had narrowed to one kill. "You murdered my mother," he said. Severin's mouth twisted. "I saved your crown." Cassian's wolf shadow rose behind him, thin, wounded, and furious. The throne hall shook under its rage. Lyra stepped between them, not to protect Severin, to protect the truth from ending as blood. "Not yet," she whispered. "He still has names to give." Cassian's wolf snarled. Lyra held her ground. For one long moment, the whole court waited to see whether the Alpha King would choose revenge or witness. Cassian lowered his sword. That choice changed the room. The Moonfang crown rose from the open chamber and drifted toward Lyra, silver branches glowing like moonlit bone. Nobles stared. Some feared her. Some wanted her crowned quickly so the horror could become ceremony. Lyra understood the trap. She looked at the crown, then at the bones. "No." The court stirred. "I was locked in Kennels before dawn," she said. "I learned my mother's name tonight. I will not let this court turn my pain into a coronation just because truth makes you uncomfortable." The Moonfang crown flared. Not angry. Proud. Cassian stepped to the open chamber and placed his cracked alpha crown beside it. Gasps spread through the throne hall. "I will not wear mine either," he said, "until every buried wolf is named, every Moonfang record is restored, and every order Severin signed is read before public witness." Severin stared in horror. "You would weaken the throne for her?" Cassian looked down at the bones. "No. I would stop pretending a grave is a throne." The royal wolves lifted their heads. One by one, they walked past the iron throne and came to Lyra. They did not kneel because she commanded them. They came because they chose. The gray pup pressed against her ankle and whispered, "Princess." This time, Lyra did not deny it. She touched the pup's head gently, then faced the court that had watched her scrub floors, sleep hungry, and bleed in kennels. "The kennels stay open," she said. "Every servant record will be searched. Every hidden child will be named. Every wolf buried under this palace will be brought into the light." Cassian turned to the guards. "Do it." No one argued. Severin was dragged away alive for witness trial. Lady Avara stood silent beside the dais, her tears useless now because the court had seen too much. Lyra remained in the center of the broken throne hall, surrounded by living wolves, ghost wolves, and the truth no one could bury again. Before dawn, they had locked her in a cage for feeding a starving pup. By morning, every royal wolf had chosen the girl they tried to erase. Every hidden wolf bone beneath the palace began to howl. The sound tore through the throne hall and silenced every argument. Nobles covered their ears. Guards dropped their blades. Even Avara stopped speaking. The howl rose from under the open throne, from the bones of royal wolves buried there after refusing to obey the stolen crown. Lyra stood barefoot in the broken marble, the Moonfang mark glowing across her collarbone. Cassian stood beside her with his cracked alpha crown in his hands. Severin was pinned beneath the scarred white wolf's paw, his face pale but still furious. "You see?" Severin spat. "This is what Moonfang blood does. It turns wolves against kings." Lyra looked down at him. "No. It lets wolves remember who betrayed them." The Moonfang crown rose from the chamber beneath the throne, glowing silver white above the buried bones. The court stared as ghostly wolves formed around it, their bodies made of moonlight and old grief. Cassian's voice was low. "Show the truth." The ghost wolves moved. Silver memories opened across the black marble. The court saw Severin, years younger, carrying an infant wrapped in kitchen cloth down the servant stairs. They saw Queen Elena Veyr, Cassian's mother, trying to protect the child. They saw Severin's blade flash. They saw the royal wolf Veyra leap to defend her queen, only to be chained and dragged below the throne. Lyra could not breathe. The infant in the memory was her. Cassian went deathly still. "You killed my mother," he said. Severin's mouth tightened. "I saved your reign." Cassian's wolf shadow rose behind him, wounded and furious. For one moment, the whole court believed he would kill Severin where he lay. Lyra stepped in front of him, not to save Severin, to save the truth. "If he dies now," she whispered, "he becomes the story. Make him name everything first." Cassian's breathing was harsh. His wolf wanted blood. His hand tightened around the broken crown until silver light cut his palm, but he did not move past her. That restraint changed the hall. Lyra turned to Severin. "Name the wolves buried under the throne." Severin laughed. You think names matter? The ghost wolves lowered their heads toward him. The scarred white wolf pressed one paw harder against his chest. Lyra's voice sharpened. Names are why you buried them. Silence. Then Severin broke. Arvin Moonfang, he said. A ghost wolf stepped forward. Zelka Moonfang. Another appeared. Thorn, Nameless, Aura, Veyr. When he spoke Veyra's name, Cassian's wolf shadow shuddered. The ghost of his mother's wolf stepped forward, silver and scarred, and bowed her head to him. Cassian looked broken. Lyra's heart hurt despite herself, but she did not comfort him. This grief belonged to truth first. The Moonfang crown drifted toward her. The court waited. Evara, pale but still proud, stepped forward. If she is Moonfang, let her take the crown now. Let her swear she will not use the wolves against Veyrhold. Lyra looked at the crown, then at the bones, then at the cage marks still raw around her wrists. No. The court stirred. Lyra lifted her chin. I was locked in Kennels before dawn. I learned my mother's name tonight. I will not let this court turn my pain into a clean ending because it is afraid of unfinished truth. The Moonfang crown flared, then lowered itself back into the open chamber, resting among the bones. Cassian looked at her with something dangerous and quiet in his eyes. Respect, not claim. He stepped to the broken throne and placed his cracked alpha crown beside the Moonfang crown. Gasps spread through the hall. I will not wear this again, he said, until every buried wolf is named, every erased Moonfang record is restored, and every order Severin signed is brought before public witness. Severin stared at him in horror. You would weaken the throne for a kitchen girl? Cassian looked down at him. No. I would stop pretending a grave is a throne. The royal wolves lifted their heads. One by one they turned away from the iron seat and walked to Lyra. They did not kneel because she commanded them. They came because they chose. The gray pup pressed against her ankle and whispered, Princess. This time, Lyra did not deny it. She touched the pup's head gently, then faced the court that had watched her starve, scrub, and bleed. The kennels stay open, she said. Every servant record will be searched. Every hidden child will be named. Every wolf buried under this palace will be brought into the light. Cassian turned to the guards. Do it. No one argued. Severin was dragged away alive, bound for witness trial. Evara stood silent beside the dais, her power broken by the simple fact that the court had seen too much to believe her tears. Lyra remained in the center of the open throne hall, surrounded by living wolves, ghost wolves, and the truth no one could bury again. Before dawn, they had locked her in a cage for feeding a starving pup. By morning, every royal wolf had chosen the girl they tried to erase. By nightfall, the eastern kennels were no longer a punishment house. They were a witness chamber. The iron cages stood open beneath rows of silver lanterns. The royal wolves moved freely through the aisles, not chained, not ordered, not forced into obedience by handlers with whips. Servants who had once been forbidden to touch the royal beasts now stood beside scribes, naming every wolf, every missing record, every servant punished for kindness. The gray pup slept in a straw bed near Lyra's feet, one bent paw tucked under its chin. Lyra sat on the lowest kennel step, wrapped in a plain wool cloak someone had brought from the kitchens. She did not know who. She had stopped asking after the third trembling servant tried to apologize with blankets, bread, or lowered eyes. Apologies were everywhere now. They did not warm her as much as people seemed to hope. Across the kennels, Cassian stood with the captain of his guard, issuing orders in a low voice. The alpha crown was no longer on his head. The black circlet remained in the open throne chamber beside the Moonfang crown, and the bones exactly where he had placed it. Without it, he looked less distant, but no less dangerous. Perhaps more so. A king without the comfort of his crown had to decide what remained. Severin had been taken to the western tower under heavy guard. Alive, furious, still full of names. Cassian had ordered that no blade touch him until every buried order had been read and recorded. Lyra had been glad. Then she hated that she was glad. Then she stopped trying to make herself clean enough to understand. A soft step sounded behind her. Mara stood there, holding a bowl of broth in both hands. The old cook looked smaller outside the kitchen, less like the woman who commanded fires and knives and pantry keys. more like someone who had spent years surviving by teaching herself not to see the child sleeping near the ash barrels. "I brought food," Mara said. Lyra looked at the bowl. Her stomach ached with hunger. She did not reach for it. Mara's hands shook. "I should have spoken sooner." "Yes." The word was quiet. Mara flinched anyway. Lyra looked at her face and found no satisfaction in the woman's pain. That annoyed her. She wanted anger to feel pure. It did not. It kept mixing with memories of burnt bread, fever cloths, Mara pretending not to notice when Lyra ate leftovers from the cooling table. "You knew enough," Lyra said. Mara's eyes filled. "Yes. You let me be locked in that cage." "Yes. Why did you come now?" Mara looked down at the broth. "Because if I do not speak while you can still hear me, I am still letting Severin decide what my silence means." That answer hurt more than begging would have. Lyra took the bowl. Not forgiveness. Food. Mara understood. She bowed her head and stepped away. Before Lyra could drink, the royal wolves rose. All of them. The gray pup woke with a small growl. Cassian turned sharply toward the outer gate. A horn sounded beyond the kennel walls. Not a palace horn. A council horn, the captain cursed. The western houses. Cassian's face hardened. Already? They must have heard the coronation bells. The kennel doors opened, and a messenger stumbled in, rain streaming from his cloak. "Your Majesty, lords of the western houses have gathered at the outer court. Lady Evra is with them. They demand the kitchen girl be placed under council protection until her blood is judged." Lyra almost laughed. Council protection. The same council that ate above buried wolves. Cassian's eyes moved to her, not deciding for her, only asking without words. She stood. Her legs still ached. Her wrists still burned. But she was tired of rooms deciding her fate before she entered them. "I will go," she said. Cassian stepped closer. "They will try to corner you. Then they can do it where the wolves can watch." The gray pup limped to her side. The scarred white wolf followed. Then the rest of the royal pack moved behind her, silent and steady. Cassian looked at them, then at Lyra. Something like fierce pride crossed his face, quickly hidden. Together, they entered the outer court. Rain fell through the open arches. Torches burned along the black stone walls. The western nobles stood in a half-circle beneath their house banners, dressed in armor and silk, faces tight with fear disguised as authority. Evara stood at their center, pale but composed again. She had recovered her beauty, not her advantage. "My king," she said, bowing to Cassian before turning her gaze to Lyra. "We ask only for order. This girl may be Moonfang, or she may be a dangerous vessel for old magic. Until blood rights confirm the truth, she should be kept apart from the royal wolves." The wolves growled. Lyra looked at Evara. "Kept where?" Ivara's mouth tightened. "In guarded chambers. Another cage. For safety." "Whose?" The question cut through the rain. A few nobles shifted. Evara lifted her chin. "The kingdom's." Lyra stepped forward. The wolves stayed behind her. That mattered. She did not need them to bare teeth for every word. "I was safe in kitchens until hunger made me steal. Safe in silence until Severin needed me buried. Safe in a kennel until the wolves refused to eat. Every person who has wanted me locked away has called it safety." Evera's eyes flashed. "You speak boldly for someone whose claim is not proven." Lyra touched the glowing mark at her collarbone. "Then prove it." The court stilled. Evara hesitated. Cassian's gaze sharpened. Lyra pointed to the royal wolves. "You said blood rights are needed. Fine, let the wolves judge before the houses, not by command, not by collars, not by fear. Let them choose where they stand." The western lords murmured uneasily. Evra had no easy way to refuse without revealing the root of her fear. So she smiled. "Very well." A silver bowl was brought. A priest cut Lyra's palm with a ceremonial blade. Cassian's jaw tightened, but he did not interfere. Lyra let one drop of blood fall onto the black stone. Nothing happened. For one awful moment, the western lords began to smile. Then the gray pup stepped forward and placed its bent paw over her blood. The stone lit silver. One by one, the royal wolves crossed the court and stood behind Lyra. Not all at once. Not dramatically. Deliberately. Each beast placed one paw into the silver light, choosing before the watching houses. The scarred white wolf came last. It lowered its head before Lyra, then turned to Cassian. A memory opened in the rain. Queen Amara Moonfang placing her infant daughter into Queen Elena's arms. Elena weeping, Severin watching from the shadows. Evara's father accepting a sealed order stamped with both Holt and council marks. Evara went white. Lyra looked at her. Your house knew. Evara's composure broke. My father did what was necessary. Cassian's voice turned cold. Then your house will answer with Severin's. The Western lords stepped away from Evara, not because they had become good, because the proof had become dangerous to stand beside. Lyra withdrew her bleeding hand and looked at the nobles. I will not be placed under council protection. I will not be locked away for order. I will stay in the kennels tonight with the wolves who were buried and starved because your houses feared choice. No one answered. Cassian turned to his guards. Open the council archives. Seal the Holt wing. No one leaves Veyrhold until the witness records are complete. Evara stared at him. You would ruin my house for her? Cassian looked at Lyra first, then back to Evara. No, he said, for what your house buried. The rain softened. The gray pup leaned against Lyra's foot. For the first time since the cage, Lyra looked at the palace and did not feel small. Not safe? Not yet, but no longer small. By midnight, the council archives were opened. Not willingly. The doors had been sealed for 16 years, guarded by Holtmen, temple clerks, and old laws written to sound holy when they were only afraid. Cassian ordered the locks broken in front of witnesses. No secret search. No quiet correction. Every scribe, every servant, every wolf handler, and every noble house representative stood in the long archive hall as iron chests were dragged into the open. Lyra stood near the doorway with the gray pup at her feet and the scarred white wolf behind her. She had changed into a plain dark cloak, but nothing about her felt hidden now. The Moonfang mark still glowed faintly at her collarbone. Servants stared at it when they thought she was not looking. Nobles avoided looking too long. Cassian stood beside the first iron chest. No crown on his head. That unsettled the room more than any threat. The captain broke the lock. Inside were servant ledgers, kennel records, sealed birth scrolls, and old council orders stamped with Holt wax. Cassian lifted the first scroll and read silently. His face hardened. Then he handed it to the nearest scribe. Read it aloud. The scribe swallowed. Order of transfer. Infant female, no house name to be recorded, assigned to lower kitchens, restricted from kennels, archives, royal nurseries, and moonflower gardens. The archive hall went still. Lyra knew the words were about her before the scribe reached the mark at the bottom. Signed, the scribe whispered, Lord Severin Holt. Witnessed by Lord Edric Holt and council heir Evara Holt. All eyes turned to Evara. She stood between two guards, pale but upright. I was 12. Lyra looked at her. Old enough to remember? Evara's mouth tightened. Cassian's voice was cold. Answer. Evara looked at the floor. Yes. The answer struck more deeply than denial. Lyra had seen Evara for years from kitchen shadows. Silk gowns, soft hands, polite smiles. The girl above the stairs had known the girl beneath them was not simply a servant. Lyra stepped closer. Did you know why I was kept hungry? Evara's face flickered. No, the scarred white wolf growled. Evara flinched. Lyra did not need more. Cassian ordered the next chest opened. The records came quickly after that. Names of Moonfang guards executed as traitors. Names of royal wolves buried beneath the throne. Payments to kitchen staff for silence. Orders forbidding Lyra from learning letters beyond household marks. Orders to punish any servant who brought her near the kennels. One note, written in Severin's hand, read, If the wolves begin choosing her, starve the bond before it flowers. Mara began to sob quietly near the back. Lyra did not turn. Not yet. Then, the final chest was opened. Inside was a small silver box wrapped in rotted moonflower silk. Cassian lifted it carefully and looked at Lyra. This bears your mother's seal. The room changed. Even the wolves went still. Lyra wanted to say no. She wanted to step back. She had survived punishment, cages, ghosts, and court suspicion. But a box from a mother she had never known felt more dangerous than all of them. The gray pup nudged her ankle. She reached for the box. The seal opened at her touch. Inside lay a tiny moonflower pendant and a folded letter. Lyra unfolded it with shaking hands. The writing was faded, but the first words were clear. My daughter, if the wolves find you before I do, trust the one who comes without command. Lyra's throat closed. Cassian looked away, giving her privacy in a room that had none. She read the rest in silence. Her mother had known she might not survive the night of the betrayal. She had asked whoever found Lyra to let the wolves choose freely, to never crown her from fear, to never make her blood into another chain. At the bottom was her true name, Lyra Ashwyn. The mark at her collarbone brightened. Every royal wolf lowered its head. This time the court did not gasp. It was done. The hidden princess was no longer rumor, ghost, or threat. She was named. Cassian turned to the witnesses. Record it, the scribe wrote with trembling hands. Lyra folded the letter and held it against her chest. She felt no triumph, only grief. The kind that arrived after proof, when the body finally understood there would be no waking from it. Severin was brought in under guard before dawn. He looked less polished now, but not broken. Men like him mistook survival for innocence. Cassian placed the opened records before him. You will stand public trial before the throne chamber, the Kennels, and the Moonfang bones. Severin looked at Lyra. And she will watch? Lyra answered before Cassian could. Yes. His mouth curved. Then she will learn ruling is uglier than being wronged. Lyra stepped forward. I am not ruling. Not yet. I am witnessing. Severin's smile faded. That word frightened him more than crown. Cassian looked to the guards. Take him. As they dragged Severin away, Evora suddenly stepped forward. Lyra. Cassian's guards moved, but Lyra raised a hand. Evora stopped several steps away. Her face was stripped of the softness she had performed for the court. She looked young now, not innocent, just young enough to make her guilt uglier. I knew enough, Evora said. Not everything, but enough. My father told me you were dangerous. Severin told me if you were ever recognized, Veyrhold would fall. I believed them because believing them kept my place clean. Lyra said nothing. Evora's voice cracked. I am sorry. Lyra looked at her for a long moment. Say it tomorrow, she said, before the servants. Evora went pale. Say it where it costs you, Lyra continued. Not here, where only I have to carry it. Evora lowered her head. For the first time, it looked like a real bow. By dawn, the archives had become another witness chamber. The servant ledgers lay open. The kennel records were copied. The Moonfang names were restored one by one. Cassian ordered the kitchens, kennels, and servant quarters searched for every hidden child, every erased family mark, every punishment written under false cause. Then he turned to Lyra. You do not have to stand through the trial today. She looked at him. Yes, I do. His expression tightened. You are exhausted. Yes. You are hurt. Yes. He was quiet for a moment. And still? Lyra looked through the archive windows toward the eastern kennels, where the royal wolves waited outside in the pale morning light. Still, she said. Cassian bowed his head once. Not as king to princess. As witness to witness. When the sun rose over Veyrhold, the court gathered again. This time, not to condemn a kitchen thief. To hear why a princess had been locked in the kennels, why wolves had starved themselves for her, and why the throne had been sitting on bones. The court gathered beneath the open throne at sunrise. No feast tables, no music, no banners lowered to hide the cracks in the marble. The iron throne remained lifted like a broken lid, revealing the Moonfang crown, the black alpha crown, and the wolf bones beneath them. The eastern kennel doors stood open behind the hall, and the royal wolves sat in silence along the walls. Lyra stood near the center in a plain dark cloak, the gray pup at her feet. Her true name had been restored in the archive before dawn. Lyra Moonfang Ashwyn. The court knew it now. The servants knew it. Cassian knew it. But the name still felt new inside her, like a blade too bright to touch without bleeding. Veyrhold was brought forward in chains. He did not kneel. Cassian stood beside the open throne without his crown. Read the charges. The scribe's voice shook but did not fail. Lord Veyrhold is accused of murdering Queen Elena Veyr, burying royal wolves beneath the throne, erasing Moonfang blood records, hiding Princess Lyra Ashwyn among the lower kitchens, ordering her isolation from the royal wolves, and using council law to conceal a stolen crown bond. The hall was silent. Cassian looked at Severin. Answer. Severin lifted his chin. I did what your father was too weak to finish. A ripple of shock moved through the court. Lyra did not move. Severin turned his eyes to her. And you, girl, should thank me. I kept you alive. The gray pup growled. Lyra stepped forward. You kept me hungry. His mouth tightened. You kept me nameless, she continued. You kept me away from the wolves because you knew they would recognize me. You did not spare me. You preserved a secret until it became useful. Severin's voice hardened. Moonfang blood would have broken Veyrhold. No, Lyra said. It would have made the wolves choose. The scarred white wolf rose. So did the others. Cassian's voice cut through the tension. And that is why the first law changes today. The court turned to him. He placed one hand on the broken alpha crown. From this day forward, no royal wolf will be collared into obedience, no servant will be denied a recorded name, no child found in this palace will be hidden from blood inquiry. No counselor may seal kennel, kitchen, archive, or nursery records without public witness. A few nobles looked alarmed. Cassian saw them. Any house that objects may explain why it fears open records. No one objected. Lyra looked at him. This was not romance. Not yet. Not forgiveness. But it was action. And after a lifetime of soft apologies and locked doors, action mattered. Then Lady Veyrhold was brought forward. She wore no jewels now. No silk performance. Only a pale gown and a face stripped of pride. Cassian did not speak for her. Lyra watched. Evera turned to the servants gathered near the lower steps. Mara stood among them, hands clasped tightly. Other kitchen girls stood behind her, wide-eyed and afraid. Evera bowed her head. I knew Lyra was not only a servant, she said. I knew my house feared her blood. I let that fear protect my place. I let her scrub floors while I walked above her. I did not ask what silence cost, because silence benefited me. The words struck the hall harder than tears had. Lyra held Evera's gaze. It was not enough, but it was public. That was a beginning. Severin laughed coldly. How touching. Confessions will not hold a kingdom together. Lyra turned back to him. Neither did bones. Cassian nodded to the guards. Take him to the Eastern Tower. His trial will continue with every recovered record, every servant witness, and every wolf name. Severin's face changed. You will not execute me? Not before the truth is finished. For the first time, Severin looked truly afraid. He was dragged away alive. When the doors shut behind him, the court remained tense, unsure whether to bow to Cassian, to Lyra, to the wolves, or to the exposed grave beneath the throne. Lyra solved it by stepping away from the dais. I am not taking the Moonfang crown today, she said. The court froze. She looked at the open chamber. My mother's blood is mine. Her crown can wait. I was locked in a kennel yesterday. I will not become a queen today just because all of you need the story to feel clean. The Moonfang crown glowed softly below, as if accepting her. Cassian lowered his head. Then it waits. Lyra turned to the servants. The kennels will stay open as a witness hall. The kitchens will be searched for every hidden record. Anyone punished for feeding, sheltering, or protecting a wolf may come forward without fear. Mara began to cry silently. Lyra did not comfort her. Not yet. The gray pup limped closer and pressed against Lyra's ankle. The scarred white wolf lowered its head before her, but Lyra did not let the moment become worship. She knelt and touched the old wolf's scarred forehead. Not subjects, she whispered. Witnesses. The wolf closed its eyes. By evening, the first names were carved into the kennel wall. Arvin Moonfang, Zelka Moonfang, Thorn of the Eastern Run, Nameless Whitepaw, Aura, Crown Sentinel, Veyra, Wolf of Queen Elena. Servants lit candles beneath each name. Royal wolves lay beside them. Children from the lower kitchens came quietly to look at the girl who had once slept near the ash barrels and now stood at the center of a kingdom's opened wound. Cassian found Lyra at the kennel gate after dark. He stopped a respectful distance away. You may leave Veyrhold if you wish, he said. No guard will stop you. Lyra looked toward the open kennels, the wolves, the servants writing names by lantern light. And if I stay? Then you stay by choice, not as my subject, not as my proof, not as a crown I can hide behind. She studied him. He looked tired, guilty, dangerous still. But he did not reach for her. That mattered. I will stay until the records are restored, she said. Until the wolves are named. Until the servants who kept this palace alive are no longer invisible. Cassian nodded. And after? The gray pup yawned at Lyra's feet. For the first time that day, almost despite herself, Lyra smiled faintly. After, she said, you may ask me again. Cassian bowed his head, not as an alpha king, claiming a hidden princess, as a man accepting he had not earned an answer yet. Night settled over Veyrhold. The kennels stayed open. The throne remained broken. The crowns rested above the bones, waiting for a future built on witness instead of silence. Before dawn, Lyra Ashwyn had been locked in a cage for feeding a starving pup. By nightfall, every royal wolf had refused the throne's lie. The hidden princess had reclaimed her name, and Veyrhold had learned the truth it feared most. Loyalty chosen freely is stronger than any crown built on obedience.